Hey YouTube, this is Adrianoni22 and my buddy here, Sergeant. We're coming at you here, starting a new line of videos here on my channel. We're going to be doing some Pokemon TCG deck profiles, battle videos, and some other discussion type topics. Here today I do have a deck list for you for my Speed Charizard deck. I've been testing this for quite a few weeks now, and I do believe it deserves a time to shine, so to speak. Charizard has really seen a lot of a bum rap in a lot of people's opinions, but I'm here to prove that there is a consistent build out there that can help him rise to the top. And we're going to discuss everything from the advantages, basically pros and cons of the deck and of the cards themselves. So let's get started here. For Pokemon, we do have 4 Charizard EX. Now I'm running 4 just for the consistency. In this deck, you really want to start with this card or have a way to get into it as quickly as possible and get in that active spot, because this deck has a very high potential to one-shot your opponent on that first attacking turn. Now this deck does prefer to go second for that very reason. Gives you an opportunity to set up against your opponent and things like that, but we'll get into that in a little bit more later. My counter to Pyroar and Safeguard would be a 1-1 line of Pyroar himself. This is also a great tech against Yveltal, which tends to give Charizard quite a bit of problem due to its high energy cost there. And on top of that, you can power up Pyroar pretty fast as well. I do run 2 Keldeo EX. This allows me to recycle the Combustion Blast as many times as needed in combination with a Float Stone. There's also a couple other uses in the deck, and I'll get to those. Last Pokemon is Jirachi EX. It's only the main reason that this card is in here is because it's basically the key ingredient to the main combo of the deck. I would run more of them, but I really just don't like the amount of HP that this thing has and having dead cards on my bench. So there that is. On to supporters, I do run a 1-of tech of Colress. Helps me prevent from being decked out, things like that. Every deck needs a little bit of recycle support. This deck mostly runs off of non-supporter draw power, so this is a good tech to have, but it's very situational in some cases. 2 Lysandre, just to help get rid of those threats. This deck tends to have a semi-hard time with certain evolution decks, i.e. Greninja Miltank, Ninetales Pyroar, things like that. But one advantage this deck does have is because you can set up in the first turn, Muscle Band Charizard fully set up, you can easily pull those things up while they're pre-evolved and one-shot them before they become a threat too much. 4-6 Sycamore, obvious reasons, and 4 Blacksmith for consistency and to pull off that combo as quickly as possible. Alright, on to the item cards. I do want to start with my counter stadium. Now, I've seen a lot of lists on YouTube for Speed Charizard, and not all of them are bad, but I've never seen one that runs a counter stadium. And as long as I've been testing this deck, this is probably the best one, even over Tropical Beach, that I could have used. The only other one I could think of would probably be Sky or Bridge, but it wouldn't really work as well. The reason I chose this card is because Charizard faces a lot of turmoil when it comes to bench hitting and things like that. It just becomes a total pain in the ass to deal with things when you got so much damage stacking on you. Things like Dust Noir can just really mess you up if you can't get rid of some of that damage. And I have played games that have just proven this card to be invaluable in that matchup. My ace spec of the deck is Computer Search. This card has saved my butt so many times it's not even funny. I was in a top game with my friend Sergeant here at our locals, and I was able to get into this card and go for a DCE and hit him for game. It was crazy. 1-of tech of Startling Megaphone just to more or less slow my opponent's damage acceleration down. This deck, obviously the main attackers have a lot of HP. So essentially, unless that Muscle Band or Silver Bangle is the make or break on the damage output, it doesn't really matter. Because you can turn around and one-shot them. And yeah, you might get revenge killed, but this deck has a way of setting up more than one Charizard at a time. So it's nothing really to worry about. Moving forward, I do run 4 Ultra Ball for consistency. It is part of our main combo here that makes this deck so fast and with the right shuffle very consistent. I've had days where I go completely undefeated at locals just because I can consistently start this off and we don't even run Skyla, so it's actually pretty great. For Professor's Letter, you'll see when I get to the energy lineup why I run 4. This deck needs to get into energy as quickly as possible. Get that into the graveyard so that you can quickly attach it to your Charizard. Now, same reason as I run Lysandre, I run 4 Catcher. The reason I run 4 is for consistency of drawing it, as well as consistency of use. Yes, I know Catcher is semi-terrible now due to the coin flip, but it can still help get those pre-evolutions and major threats out of the way. So a little bit of extra draw power. I do run 3 copies of Roller Skates. More or less because it is some extra draw power. It's not always essential. Sometimes it is, but it definitely is not a con to the deck. It definitely helps out with consistency when it wants to. 3 bikes, just in case you do find yourself in that situation where, you know, you start with that awesome setup. You got Charizard up front, Keldeo, Ultra Ball, you know, the whole shebang, and I'll go over that with you guys. It does help to get some more draw power into your hand. I do run 3 Muscle Band just to get into that 170 damage with Charizard, one-shotting the Yveltals, the Xerneas EX, Mewtwo EX, which is going to become huge here in the next set. Because Mewtwo EX is definitely a big threat, not as much as Yveltal, because Mewtwo would need at least 1 more energy on it and a Muscle Band in order to one-shot it. But it still definitely helps to one-shot those threats. 3 Floatstone. My belief on Floatstone is you run 1 more Floatstone than you run Keldeo. So being as we run 2, I run 3 Floatstone. Alright, and onto the energy. I run 4 DCE and 8 fires, and this is exactly why I was talking about running the 4 Professor's Ladder, because at least now I have a consistent way to get out all of my energy, quite literally. 1 letter for every 2 energy is the way that I do that, just because you'll basically the combo is letter for 2 energy, Ultra Ball, Jirachi, Blacksmith, and then in combination with a DCE, you're set up. You don't even need the Muscle Band, but if you have it, use it. A little something extra that I wanted to discuss is some of the matchups that I've run across with this deck, that, you know, some of the problem matchups as well as some of the easy matchups. Now, I know I've already talked a lot about how this deck can have a little bit of issues with evolution decks. Now, it really just depends on the situation. If this deck sets up first, they're doomed, in my experience. I mean, I've gone up against Greninja Miltank, Delphox, Pyroar, Vraybor, you know, things like that. I've gone up against a lot of those decks with this and been able to prevail just by getting my setup first, because you can bring that early pressure and force them to make early plays that they should have waited for later in order to even be able to do anything to you. So, I mean, that's kind of like a two-way street. On the other hand, if you're playing against Greninja Miltank, or even worse, if you're playing against Empoleon Miltank, this deck does have a very hard time with water, for obvious reasons. Because right now, I mean, Keldeo is a huge threat to this deck. The way this deck can get around it is through catchers, bringing up that Blastoise to get rid of it, and then one-shotting it with a Charizard. One-shotting the Keldeo or the Blastoise. Black Kyurem, however, this deck does not carry a counter to besides Pyroar. Which in that matchup, the only way they would kill me is through Blastoise, and that would just be stupid. Let's see. Yveltal, Garbodor, or Yveltal in general is a lot of main topics that I hear about when I look at the lists that people have made for this card. In my personal opinion, it's definitely an even matchup because it's basically whoever gets set up first wins. Charizard can easily one-shot Yveltal and set itself up a lot faster, especially in a build like this where it's around that. I have built other variants where I tech certain things, such as Mewtwo, random receivers over Jirachi, things like that, just to prevent starting with Jirachi and allowing my opponent an extra 2 prizes. But I definitely believe that Yveltal, yes, it's a huge threat because of the energy cost that Charizard has, but if you play your cards right and have the right setup, you can definitely get around it. Now, I pulled Pyroar out because there's been games where I don't have Pyroar set up. I have it simply there to stall my opponent out while I set up a Charizard. And I can't tell you how invaluable that's been, because sometimes you're just waiting to draw that Skates to get into your Blacksmith and get out there. In all the while you can be healing with Pokemon Center, and it's just really invaluable. Sorry about that. Let me see here. One of the other weaknesses I would say of this deck would be, just like any other deck, it can have a little bit of consistency issues with dead draws. As far as the build itself, I haven't seen a build that would run near as consistent as this one does. Some changes I would make to adjust that is maybe run a 4th Skates over something else in the deck. Like I said, there's actually been builds that I've tested that don't even run Megaphone, and it actually did not hurt me all that much. This deck doesn't have any problems with Garbodor because the only abilities they're going to shut off is Pyroar and Keldeo, which with the Lissandres and catchers, Garbodor becomes a non-issue, as well as Trevenant with the Lissandres. They just become a non-issue because you can bring them up and kill them so easily. In that type of situation, they can't get it out until after you've had at least one turn. So as long as you're in that Trevenant matchup, as long as you can get at least a wing attack set up in the amount of time it takes them to get one Trevenant out, you'll be fine. Is there anything else? Alright, well YouTube, this has been my Speed Charizard deck. I've waited a while to want to show you guys this. It is a really good deck. I've really enjoyed playing it. It's lots of fun. It's hilarious to watch your opponent get pissed off because their Litleo got one-shotted by a wing attack. And there was nothing they could do. The deck just has a way of being able to go off that first turn and really set you up for an early win. I have donked people a lot in tournaments, and yes, it can be infuriating. I am currently the only one running a build like this at my locals. So I am the only one who has tested it, but I have been testing it for about 2.5 months since the release of Flash Fire. At first, I didn't even like this card, but then I saw its potential. So that's all I have for today, guys. This is AdrianOni22 logging off for you guys today. Don't forget to comment, subscribe. If you have any questions, any ideas, anything that I may have left out that you want in a future video, I'd really appreciate it. I'm very new to this. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching.